Hey, Pat and Doug here with another episode of the Wealthy Gym Owners. And today we're going to talk about revenue bottlenecks or constraints that you're experiencing and how to get past those to grow your business. All right, Doug, let's kick things off. What do you have for us today?
So when I was thinking about this, I was thinking about our roadmap that we have for our coaching clients and the different stages, the different levels. And yeah, there's the tools and the tactics that hopefully get you to the next one. But I thought it would be helpful to maybe hear what I observe as the bigger bottlenecks, right? At each, if we break it down, say in revenue frameworks of like 0 to 10 and 10 to 25, right? So if we start with 0 to 10 being the first big bottleneck, like how do we get to 10K a month? I think the biggest bottleneck there is simply just getting any marketing in, right? We have some clients in our Project 500 group that have aspirations of having that bigger gym, but are still kind of solopreneurs and doing less than 10K a month or right on the cusp there. And of course, their biggest question is, how do I get over the hump of 10K? And usually at that stage, being a solopreneur, since you're doing all the training yourself, that any marketing is going to help, right? Any marketing is going to help. So just adopting a few marketing strategies, I think at that stage, and frankly, as much as we'd love for you to be consistent, you don't even need to be consistent at that stage. You just need to do something. But curious what from in your experience going from seeing clients go from that 5 to at least get over that 10 hump, what do you see as the bottleneck?
Yeah, I mean, it is definitely jumping past hey, I'm just bringing some clients with me from my previous job, or I'm relying on word of mouth, or I latched onto one kind of episodic promotion that got some people in. And in our industry, we have this luxury of memberships and recurring revenue. So the urgency to figure out consistent marketing probably isn't as great as it would be if you had a business that was one service at a time, transactional. And so I think getting people to break free from that and seeing marketing as this is stuff that I have to do very regularly, because I think that's just a shift as an owner that, I mean, this is going to sound really corny, but I my unpaid kind of job is working with a bunch of teenagers as a baseball coach, and we deal with some strength conditioning. And if you left them to their own devices, that probably only work upper body, chest, and arms, right? But it's like trying to build an athlete only working chest and arms probably doesn't get you very far. Well, I see once they get that, add the consistency to marketing. It doesn't even have to be great. It just has to be consistent. And I know you even said it like in the inverse. They just have to be doing more. But, adding in 3 times a week emails always gives somebody a jump because they weren't doing them. Adding in our personal profit pipeline gives them a jump because they weren't doing it. Starting a referral campaign gives them a jump. Interjecting any sort of advertising, online or offline, gives them a jump. It doesn't have to be optimal. It doesn't have to be perfect. But the minute they start to see themselves as, hey, this is part of my job, it's like, oh, wait a minute, I want to be a better athlete. Now I got to train legs. And you don't have to be good at it. It's just the fact that you were doing squats or lunges or whatever else make a pretty big difference. And so you'll see guys make that jump from like 5 to 15 by adding something in, but it's kind of erratic, or they get consistent with one thing but ignore the others, or maybe they're consistent but it's just kind of thin, right? Like it's, hey, I'm sending 3 times a week emails, but it's all cut and paste stuff, and I'm not doing any of my own kind of content, or I never change my super signature, or I mean, I bought this social media pack and I just post what they give us. So I'm doing something, so I'm more visible, but then it's okay. Now we actually have to get more complete, and we actually have to focus more on quality.
Yeah, for sure. So the next bottleneck I see is the like 10 to 15 and really pushing over to the 25K. So let's call it $250,000 a year, 300 grand a year top line, right? And that is a big bottleneck because there's, in my eyes, two big things. And I'm sure there's other factors as well, but in my eyes, there's two big things, which is you have to go from that kind of randomness that we talked about with marketing to actually being consistent, right? Actually being consistent. And even the mediocre strategies done consistently will get you to 25 as a round number, right? It's the quality at the next bottleneck. We certainly have to dial it in, but at this stage, like things like the implementing referral strategy, implementing reactivation strategies, even just doing that consistently is going to get you to that 25K. It's the folks that hang out on the lower end of that. Typically it's good for a month and then didn't do anything the next month. Good for a month and then didn't do anything for the next month. And do a reactivation campaign, then wait 6 months before they do the next one. And then they just hang out in that 10 to 15K and never make it to that 25K hump. So that's certainly one bottleneck that I see. The other bottleneck is at some point in that stage, you're going to need help, right? I mean, we have folks that can get to that solopreneur on average, say 15 to 20. But if you're going to push 25 and beyond, you're really going to need some help. And so hiring people and finding the right people and training them becomes a skill that most of us, I know I didn't have prior to all this, right? Nobody teaches you how to do that. And so the skill of recruiting, the skill of finding, interviewing, identifying, okay, is this person going to be a good fit or not? And then the real work is, I think it's the idea that, well, they signed on the dotted line and they're a team member now. Well, in my eyes, the work just starts, right? We have to start the work of training them and making sure they're delivering the standards. So those would be the two ones for me at that bottleneck.
Well, and it's so easy to see why that's such a problem, right? Because at the startup stage, you're probably not making much money. So you're finally, maybe when you get to that 15-ish mark, you're paying yourself a little bit. You're starting to feel kind of good about this. And then all of a sudden, there's this shift that in many ways kind of feels like a step back, right? It's like, okay, I have to keep all these balls in the air. I have to do the marketing that is yielding this better outcome. But I'm hiring somebody, so I'm going to have to pay them. So some of that money is going out the door. But I feel like I'm working twice as hard because I'm doing the job that ultimately I want them to do still because they're not equipped to do it. Plus, I have to equip them to do it. So I feel like I'm working harder. I'm temporarily maybe taking less. And it's pretty obvious why that seems to be kind of a glass ceiling for a lot of people because they'll try it and not have a plan and not have systems and not have a strategy to do it. And invariably what happens is they do a bad job training the person and it doesn't work out. And so then they say, well, I just can't hire people. So I'm just going to keep going back to doing what I've been doing. Or they hire somebody and they put a little bit of time into it. So they drop the ball in the marketing and that causes the revenue to regress a little bit. So I think that once you get past that $5,000 to $7,000 mark, that just kind of comes with just getting out the door and making sure people know you have a business and bring a few people with you. This is the next real bottleneck that I think, man, probably 2/3 of the businesses that I see go through this at some point or another, because like you said, you certainly weren't being taught this in school. You weren't being taught this through a credential. Nobody talks about this at the conferences or seminars. But you have to have a plan to hire. You have to have a plan to develop, and you have to understand as an owner that this is an investment in your future, not an expense that you're just kind of trying to plug somebody in and advocate responsibility.
Yeah. Yeah. So the next bottleneck typically comes trying to go from say 25 to 40 or 50. And I know that's a wide range, but it's wide because typically we have a ton of clients that we're trying to help right now that are in that like 25 to 30 range, and they just can't get past that glass ceiling. And once you get over like 35 to 40, in my experience, there's a bit of another hockey stick effect, right? Because you really can't get past the 25 to 40 stage without these next couple of things that I'm going to go over. But once you do, there seems to be that next kind of big push up that it probably doesn't go as fast as we'd like, but it goes much faster than if you look in the rearview mirror of how long it took you to get there. So at this stage, I think the three constraints that I see the most is your model and your pricing, it being one, right? Your model and your pricing. So I think you can be improperly priced and still grow up to a certain point. But in order to really have that 500K business that we speak about, I think you have to make sure that you're priced right. And you have to be running a model that is well put together as far as it's got the right pricing associated with it, the right memberships associated with it. It is scalable in the sense of multiple coaches and trainers can implement it. It's not just unique to you and only you know how to run it. So model and pricing is a big one. We have to make sure that we fix those. And again, could you fix them earlier? Yes. But in hindsight, it's a lot of, well, we have these clients that are grandfathered in and we have to get them up and we take forever to get them up. I know I did. And it's really an anchor to your business that holds you back. So I think model and pricing is a big one. At this stage, systems become important. Prior stages, I'm not saying that systems aren't important, but you can kind of out hustle the inefficiency of things. But to really get to 50K, especially in that 30 to 40 range, you now have multiple team members. You now have probably, for most brick and mortar gyms, 100, 150 plus clients. And so you got a good amount of moving pieces. And what can happen if we don't have things like an onboarding system, we don't have things like session standards, all of a sudden the experience goes down and you start dealing with retention challenges of people leaving or people getting frustrated, and your time gets sucked into fixing those things rather than marketing. So that would be the second bottleneck at this stage that I see. And the third one is your marketing, hopefully at this point, is good and consistent, but I think you now need to kind of dial it in from a quality perspective and figure out what are the things that you're going to double down on, right? Because you can't do it all. You can't do it all. But at this stage, I find maybe you're going to become like, we have a client that absolutely skyrocketed once he doubled down on workshops. Like workshops was his thing. He became really good at running them. He built out a marketing challenge, a marketing campaign that filled those, and a back end to sell them after the workshop. And so I'm not saying go do workshops, but I'm saying at this stage, you got to figure out like, what is the thing you enjoy doing? And what is the marketing, 2, 3 marketing things, not 10, but what are the 2, 3 marketing things that you're going to become really good at? And that's going to be your main driver of lead source going forward.
Yeah, the reality is, each of the people that I think that we see in boardroom and even in Project 500, they've got some unique characteristics, some unique skills. And when they start to kind of sync that up with the marketing counter and say, okay, how do I add some of me, some of my individuality to this, and maybe put a little more emphasis on the things that I'm really good at, or swap this thing out for that thing, man, it's like rocket fuel. And it's no longer, hey, I'm just kind of cutting and pasting stock stuff out there. I'm actually putting something out that positions me as like a category of one in our market.
Yeah, for sure. And just to address the final bottleneck, not that there's not more past this, but for sake of simplicity, keeping it at that, those of us that get to like 50K and are pushing towards, whether that's trying to max out a location or trying to have enough funds to fuel a second location or whatever, but you're trying to grow beyond 50K. And if I watch our clients that got past that milestone, it typically comes down to the delegating of skills that you are basically a bottleneck at this point in the business, right? You are very influential and never, I don't say never bottleneck, but you're very helpful to the business to get to 50K. But at some point, for a single location brick and mortar, if you've done a good job with the previous bottlenecks, you're priced right, numbers are good, marketing's good, you become the bottleneck of growing the business where you're still trying to do it all yourself. You're still trying to keep your hands on everything. And that's just not the reality. You have to be able to delegate and elevate up, bring on a head coach that's going to maybe oversee things. That's also a great thing for employee retention, because we certainly know at all stages, but especially at this stage, losing a team member really stings the business. And if you have some way for them to grow within the business, that's something that is certainly helpful for you and for them, allows you to step back. So I think the delegating and elevating to get to 50K and beyond is really big. And then the final thing I would say is a true understanding of the numbers of the business. Again, should you know your numbers prior to this? Of course. But the idea of knowing the profit margin, knowing exactly how many leads, appointments, et cetera, really having that dialed in so that, again, you can turn those dials and you know how to turn those dials becomes super important at this stage. And that will probably be the two most common bottlenecks we see at that stage.
Yeah, and it's tough, right? Because your role as an owner continues to evolve, and you've got to be willing to adapt, not just, hey, I'm going to install a system for somebody else to execute. I'm going to hire somebody else to cover this shift, but you have to evolve. And if you spent the last 5 years being an on the floor coach for 25 hours a week, or you've always kind of just out hustled the financial side of it and you've never paid a whole lot of attention to the numbers, this takes some of your evolution. And honestly, I don't want to get too philosophical with this, but I think that's part of why this whole wealthy gym owner movement exists here, because a lot of people get caught up in the tactics. But if you want to build the business that I think so many people want as an owner, there there are a lot of systems that can be provided to you to help do this, but it also means that, like, when you say delegate and elevate, don't get so caught up in just the delegate part. Some of this is elevating.
Yeah, that's huge.
All right. Well, Doug, thank you again for sharing bottlenecks. Hopefully, if you heard something that maybe kind of made your ears perk up a little bit, and you said, wait a minute, that's me, that's where I'm at right now, then you understand that it's not uncommon. And we've seen plenty of people kind of break through those or move through those. And the upside on the other side of them is pretty big. But what you're experiencing is normal, but you still got to resolve it. All right. And that's another episode of the Wealthy Gym Owners, signing off.